This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees. Independently owned and operated since 1993, Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from?
And by the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation. As a nonprofit, we rely on support from listeners like you. If you like what you hear, please consider a donation. To learn more and make a gift, visit us at www.gosuperior.org.
Welcome to the Lake Superior Podcast. I'm Walt, Lindala.
And I'm Frida, Waara. We are made stronger by story, and there's no better source than the continent's largest body of fresh water, Lake Superior.
So join us as we highlight the 5 national parks that ring this greatest of the Great Lakes, meet the people, tour the places, and learn about the projects that make these parks and body of water so remarkable.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
I'm Walt Lindala.
And I'm Frida, Waara.
Welcome once again to the Lake Superior Podcast. Today, Frida, another interesting one on the docket that has to do with storytelling and more, but telling a story that's important to hear. Tell us a little bit about what you lined up here for us today.
You know, Walt, I love documentaries.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy. That's how, you and I first were working together years back.
Yes, indeed.
And, when you get a chance to have an Emmy Award-winning documentarian on the line, it's even better. And let's put the icing on that cake that this story is about our beloved Lake Superior. So I want you to meet John Shepard. He is the Associate Professor, Assistant Director of the Center for Global Environmental Education at Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Welcome to the podcast, John.
Well, thank you. Thank you to both of you.
Let's get right into it here. We're talking about a new piece, your latest film. Give us a little bit of background on it. What is it? And then we'll kind of get into how it all came together. Tell us about your latest film.
Sure. That sounds good. So what we're working on right now is a documentary about the impacts of climate change on Lake Superior. And the title of the film is A Sea Change for Lake Superior. So the film, it's an hour-long program. It's being co-produced by our center at Hamline University and PBS North, the PBS affiliate in Duluth. And so it's an hour long, and it will be looking at the fact that Lake Superior, as cold, as famously frigid, and as huge as it is now among the fastest warming lakes in the world. A number of scientists working with different organizations have documented that since the late 1990s, the surface waters of Superior on average have warmed 4 or 5 degrees Fahrenheit over that period of time. And when you think about how huge Lake Superior is, that is very significant. So the documentary just really explores that question or that fact, asking the question, well, what does that mean? What does that mean for the lake's natural systems, for fisheries, for people and communities that live along the shores of the lake and folks whose livelihoods are closely tied to the lake or who recreate in the lake. So we look at those from those perspectives, what does that mean? But also, what does it mean for the legacy of a lake that is so renowned for being cold? And the coldness of the waters of Lake Superior are really a important factor in the lake as a natural system. The ecology of the lake is very much a cold water ecology. The animals and plants, aquatic creatures and aquatic plants that live in Superior have, they're there because they are accustomed to and have adapted to those conditions. So, what might that mean going forward? So that's kind of a quick overview. And as part of that, we're we are embracing and working with indigenous partners to, understand more about, cultural perspectives on Superior and what ways is it important for the different bands of Ojibwe who live along the lake, as well as, other voices and other perspectives of people who are close to Lake Superior.
Could you tell me, John, just a little bit about how this all works together with the Center for Global Environmental Education at Hamline, and also a little bit of your background in it, how it works? You're assistant director, you're associate professor at the university. How does this all work together, like your background and then documenting this information? Right.
So our Center for Global Environmental Education at Hamline University is a center at a university commonly does things that are a little outside the box compared to, much of what happens at a university. So, we do teach courses. We're part of the School of Education. We work a lot with teachers, providing continuing studies and learning programs, institutes, workshops, that kind of thing. But we also have a very broad mission, and our mission is to engender environmental literacy and stewardship in citizens of all ages. So that's a great big kind of vision. Right. And we work all around the country. We've been very active up and down the Mississippi River. We're doing projects in the Gulf of Mexico and increasingly in the Great Lakes. So our goal is to, generally speaking, in our work within the Lake Superior region and elsewhere, is to really help people deepen their understanding of the natural world that we live within, the landscapes that surround us, how those natural systems work, and how cultural and natural systems connect with each other. And I'm actually an anthropologist by training, not a natural scientist. So I've always been really interested in kind of those connecting points between cultural traditions and natural environments. So a lot of our work, kind of happens in that area. And in Western Lake Superior, we are this documentary that we're doing is really part of a larger public education initiative that is impacting large numbers of people, mostly up to now on the North Shore of Lake Superior and in the Duluth area, but we're expanding our reach along the South Shore into Wisconsin and into the UP of Michigan. So we've got a network of museum-quality interactive multimedia kiosks, kind of big storytelling machines that you walk up to. You'd be familiar with them, seeing them in a museum, and you touch the screen and have this interactive learning experience. We call that our Lake Superior Multimedia Gallery, and it has about 6 hours of content, videos, interactive experiences, 360 landscape panoramas. So it's really to engage people in learning about the natural and cultural heritage of Lake Superior. And we've got a smartphone app that is a companion to that has all that same content on it, but it knows where you are and can take you to places that you're interested in visiting. And then we repurpose all that content again over the internet for K-12 schools and integrate that with classroom activities and lesson plans that teachers can use. So it's this multi-part initiative that is having a big impact in Minnesota, and we're looking forward to expanding that work along the South Shore.
John, I wanted to ask, it really right away caught my attention when you said that the lake has warmed 4 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit since the 1990s. Do you have any comparison on how the other Great Lakes, Huron, Ontario, Michigan, Erie, what degrees they may have warmed in that time frame?
Well, what we know from in doing this project, the Sea Change for Lake Superior, we've been interviewing numerous scientists who have been studying Superior and other Great Lakes and other large lakes around the world. And Superior kind of stands out in terms of its warming, and part of the reason for that is that a couple of things. It's quite a bit farther north than the other Great Lakes. And compared to other large lakes, Africa has a couple of very large lakes, Lake Victoria. There's Lake Baikal in Russia, which is actually the deepest lake in the world, has the most volume of water. But Lake Superior is the largest by surface area. Lake Superior has 10% of the world's surface fresh water in it. And so it's very large, and it's very far north. And so that's part of the reason why historically it has been so cold. But with our changing climate, what's happening is, as the climate has been warming, that has had an impact on conditions in the winter in terms of the extent of ice that covers Lake Superior and the duration of ice, the duration that ice is covering the lake. So we've had more ice-free winters and more winters where the ice just isn't as on the lake as long. And that is, that's different than the other Great Lakes because they aren't so far north and they aren't as cold. And it's massive. And so that warming, it is warming faster than the other Great Lakes. I don't have the numbers on, comparatively how much that is the case. But the, Superior is the one that does stand out as dramatically warming in comparison to really all other lakes around the world.
We're talking with John Shepard today, who is Associate Professor and Assistant Director of the Center for Global Environmental Education at Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota, about his latest film, A Sea Change for Lake Superior, and a wide range of all kinds of other related things. Film, John, is a powerful medium. It's possibly the most powerful. You've mentioned these other tools. You talked about a phone app. You've talked about this kiosk, which to me sounds fascinating that information is sort of self-contained like that. How is this going over? Do you have any measures of perhaps some success, some feedback from the users? How is that effort going?
Yeah. So we've really, been implementing this multi-part, outreach strategy since 2022 in the Western Lake Superior. We've done the same kind of thing in other parts of the country, along the Mississippi River, in Hawaii, and the Gulf Coast. But in this region, our region up here is really where we've been able to have the resources to really develop this concept more fully. So in 2022, we had 18 of our these museum-quality large multimedia kiosks out in all the major state parks, the highway rest areas, major museums and interpretive centers along the North Shore of Lake Superior from Grand Portage to Duluth. And we rolled out the smartphone app, and we got the K-12 online learning program online and began connecting with school districts in the region. And in that first year, we had about 152,000 distinct users interacting with this content that we've created through these different strategies. So that's pretty significant. There are, at the same time, there are like 6.7 million people that pass through Duluth on their way up the North Shore. So, there's a lot of people coming to our part of the country that, to Superior Shore. So, there's a lot of people out there, but we have seen active growth and participation among people who make commitments to keep pollution out of their storm drains for those that live in urban areas. That's one of the kind of the action steps that we encourage people to take. So that has been growing as a result of this public outreach campaign that we've been doing. And then this year, 2023, we've expanded this whole effort. We now have about 30 of these kiosks in more and more places. So far, it looks like we'll be close to doubling the number of folks who we're interacting with. So it's up in the above 250,000 folks for this year. So it's growing, and we are finding, feedback has been very positive as we've, occasionally able to really drill down and kind of get a sense of how people are interacting with these resources. So we've been pleased with the impacts. The other thing is we've really over the years have researched, how do you move people? First, a couple of questions. How do you get people's attention? We live in an age where, we're bombarded with media all the time. So how do you stand out and get people's attention? And then how do you move people to action? And so we've actually done research in those areas, and the strategies we've developed really have grown out of that. And storytelling is very powerful. Place-based stories that kind of evoke for people, what's special about places of importance, the waters and lands surrounding this incredible lake. People have deep experiences people who experienced Superior and had a chance to recreate and be out there on the lake or along the shores. That impacts people deeply. And if stories can kind of evoke those emotional associations and then, provide, useful information on top of the emotional impact, that has proven to be effective. So that's, that in a nutshell, we're the whole effort is expanding and has been proving to be effective.
When we think about those numbers, Walt, the 152,000 that first year with the kiosks, maybe doubling that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, John. We're gonna get you to the UP, but the entire population of the Upper Peninsula, you've probably already touched in a sense, because we're just 300,000 people in the UP. Walt?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
And, it's interesting, John, when you're talking about these things, it's the kiosks in particular are really interesting to me. But you touched on something just a moment ago about like things that people can do to make a difference. You talked storm sewers, and I know there's something that you're doing with that. Can you share just a little bit more about that with us?
Yeah. So, we always work to include opportunities for stewardship or for people to activities that people can do to address issues that they're learning about as they interact with our outreach programs. We want to inspire people, we want to engage them, but also give them as concerns about the warming of the lake and some of the implications of the warming of the lake, which we haven't really talked about yet. We want to give opportunities for action and keeping just what are called non-point source pollutants, and that's things like grass clippings and leaves and herbicides from your garden, pesticides, even dirt that you might be using to add to a garden, that kind of stuff. If you can keep all of those, as well as litter and certainly things like motor oil and that kind of thing, keeping those pollutants out of storm drains is very important for just maintaining the quality of our waterways. Because in any urban area, typically the storm drains, there is no treatment of whatever flows into those drains, and they fairly quickly will be deposited in the nearest waterway. So if it's a community along the shores of Lake Superior, that those storm drains are going to be draining into the lake. And one of the consequences of the warming of the lake is the increase in algae blooms, particularly along the south shore of the lake, between Duluth Superior and Bayfield, or into the Chequamegon Bay, is where they have been occurring, but in other places as well. So keeping those nutrients that come along with grass clippings and leaves and stuff like that, keeping that out of the storm drains is an important step that anybody can do. Just be more conscientious about raking up leaves, not blowing your grass clippings out into the street, and so forth. And if everybody does that, that's gonna help mitigate the occurrence of these algae blooms, which is one of the things that's happening with the warming of Lake Superior.
We're talking with John Shepard today, Associate Professor and Assistant Director for the Center for Global Environmental Education at Hamline University in St. Paul, Minnesota.
I really appreciate that storm drain, just being watchful. Mm-hmm. I mean, where I live, I don't have it. I live right on Lake Superior, so you better believe there's no fertilizers and insecticides going on any. Well, we don't even have any grass anyway. We got a couple of dogs, and
grass.
you know how that goes. But the idea that if you are in a metropolitan area in those cities, Marquette being the largest city on Lake Superior in Michigan, you know, we all go for a walk. It's not a bad thing to just be kind of, hey, wait a minute, we need to clean that up, because, you know, our municipalities don't have the labor force to be able to go and watchdog that stuff. But if it's right out in front and you're going to get the mail anyway, it's a great place to pay attention.
Now, John, you were talking here a moment ago about the implications of this, and as the temperatures continue to rise and algae blooms and such, we're hearing more and more about that, especially in places like Marquette, where we're doing this today, which is right on the lake. What are some of the other things maybe that are potentially going to happen if we fail or neglect to get a handle on this?
Right. So the other major impacts related to the warming of the lake that are being documented have to do with, one of them has to do with invasive species. So Lake Superior has quite a few less species of invasive species as compared to the other Great Lakes. Something like 80 in Lake Superior compared to 180 in the lower lakes. And one of the reasons why that is the case is because the lake is so cold. So in the 40s and 50s, many people are aware that the sea lamprey was an invasive species that got into the Great Lakes and really had huge impacts on fish populations in all of the Great Lakes except Lake Superior. It did, it was in Lake Superior, did have, an impact, but not as bad as the lower lakes. And the reason was, because of how cold the lake is. So those, and then sea lamprey has been managed, and their numbers have been reduced significantly. The predator fish species, the lake trout, have rebounded, and so that things have been moving in a good direction as far as that goes, as related to the sea lamprey. But as the lake has been warming, there has been documentation of increased presence of the sea lamprey. They're doing better, so it will require more effort to manage the sea lamprey. Other kinds of species, invasive species, quagga mussels, zebra mussels, are a couple that are pervasive in the lower 48, or not lower 48, in the lower Great Lakes. And again, they're not as prevalent in Lake Superior. Our understanding is that that's less related to the temperature and more to the chemistry of the lake. There's less calcium in Lake Superior, so there's not as much material for, especially the quagga mussels, to make their shells. But temperature may play a role in that as well. So, invasive species is another area of concern that's related to the warming of the lake. And then a third one is just major storm events. And I'm sure a lot of your listeners will remember 2018 being a year when there was a 1,000-year storm event that made its way along the UP and all of northern Wisconsin as well, that, resulted in incredible impacts in, city streets and wastewater or stormwater systems, knocking out bridges. And, as those storms occurred, huge amounts of runoff from the rivers that drain into the South Shore were happening, carrying large amounts of sediment. The sediment blooms from those big storms, and there's another 1,000-year storm in 2016. Those sediment blooms are so big they could be seen from space, and of course that sediment is carrying nutrients and material, soil from the land. And the major algae blooms that have occurred were in association, after these big storm events. And so, the storm events themselves are, they had huge impact, but and then you couple that with the algae blooms that came in, as an aftermath. And what they found is, when you have a big storm event, if you've also had the waters have been particularly warm, that's a situation that really tends to be coincided with the larger scale algae blooms. So those are the three things that the scientists we have been talking to are identifying and most concerned about. There's also concern about plastics pollution, which is beginning to show up in Lake Superior, as big and as pristine as it is. And so, and that's not a direct that's not directly caused by the warming climate and the warming of the lake, but it is another area of concern. And of course, plastics are strongly connected to fossil fuels and so forth. So, they're connected in indirect ways. But those are the main things that folks we are talking to are identifying and concerned about.
John, where can we view your films?
Well, the Sea Change for Lake Superior is still being the sausage is still being made. We are have filmed almost all the filming is done. It took us 9 months or so. We did some over the winter. We did a little bit last fall, and then through this last summer. And we're now fairly furiously editing and putting things together. So it'll be ready for broadcast by the first week in December. It'll begin broadcast by PBS North in Duluth, and then sometime within a month or two after that, it will be available for viewing online with PBS North, and then through our YouTube channel as well. And then subsequently, it'll eventually be released to PBS affiliates in other states around the region and around the country. So that's a rough timeline.
Seems fair.
People can look forward to seeing that.
It seems fair. Frida and I both have a background in production like this, so we understand when you say furiously editing. Also, for looking things up online, if people have questions more about this overall initiative, because there's other pieces, there's much more than films, and there's a lot of information. Where can people find out more about the overall initiative and the effort? Yeah,
good question. So our website and our web address is cgee.hamline, which is spelled HAMLINE.edu. So cgee.hamline.edu we have information about our storm drain stewardship project, which is called Adopt a Drain. That actually has its own URL that is just adoptadrain.org. Mm-hmm. And people are welcome to explore that as well. And that is a very cool project that we're implementing all around the country. We've got cities subscribe to participate in this, and our website, people can find the storm drain. If their city's involved in the project, they can find their storm drain on a map in front of their house and click on that and give it a name. You get to give your storm drain an original name, and then you report your estimates of the amount of leaves and grass clippings and other debris that you're keeping out of the drain, which is that's really valuable information for municipalities. As they are enacting this effort, it's helpful for them to know, how much, what kind of impacts this kind of effort is having. So, anyway, adoptadrain.org or cgee.hamline.edu are a couple of websites people can use.
That's perfect for us, John. I mean, that's some good information right there. And there's a lot that you're keeping your arms around, and we appreciate your time today to talk to us about it. And hopefully we'll get some of our folks that listen here to the podcast to go to these sites and check it out and find out a little bit more about it as you continue to, I guess, try to spread this across Lake Superior to get this information out. And we really appreciate your comments today.
The whole Great Lakes Basin is so grateful for your work, John.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. That's wonderful. Great to hear.
John Shepard, Associate Professor and Assistant Director for the Center for Global Environmental Education at Hamline University in St. Paul. That's a lot that program is talking about.
Wow.
I mean, there's a lot, as I said, to put your arms around it. And,
yes.
John is part of the team that does this, but telling the story, especially by having films, documentaries, but this interactive kiosk that they have and such, it certainly seems like it would be worth seeking out. Just even if you have questions that you're not even sure about the whole discussion about Lake Superior, the Great Lakes, climate change, there's a lot there at least to look at to educate yourself.
A sea change for Lake Superior, you can bet I'm going to be on it. And that should be ready December of 2023. It sounds like it's going to be premiered with public broadcasting, but just keeping our fingers close to that. And, the other thing is John just recently won a regional Emmy Award for a past program called Northern Nights Starry Skies. And, we just talked with John Muller about the Dark Sky, the International Dark Sky Park. This is with I believe Travis Nowitzki is with the Grand Portage Band. And I just saw, another short little clip, but it was enough to whet my appetite to say, I want to learn more about how well he can document our Aurora Borealis.
And this has been interesting as we talk about all of the things that are influencing Lake Superior and our influence on that and how it all works together. And it really reinforces the connectivity, the way all things are connected, whether it's in indigenous thought, it's in more traditional thought with the environment. And we hope that at least today we've given you some food for thought as you're listening into the podcast. We thank John Shepard for his time. So it's really something, I'd have to say, Frida.
Walt, if you were to travel the lakeshore from Grand Portage all the way to Pictured Rocks, it's got to be maybe 1,000 miles. I'm not exactly sure, but lots of different stories amongst those five parks. But as you said, they're still all connected because that big blue still depends on us, really, to take care of it. I mean, certainly it is what a treasure we have on this planet.
Absolutely. And we need to take care of it. We appreciate you joining us on the podcast today and giving us your time to listen in to John Shepard and our conversation. If you've got an idea for something that you would like to hear us talk about on the podcast, you can get it to the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation, and they will forward it on to us, and we'll look into it because we're always looking to tell more stories of the people and the places around the Big Blue Lake Superior. I'm Walt Lindala.
I'm Frida Waara. Thanks for listening. The National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation, NPLSF, is the only official nonprofit 501c3 fundraising partner of the National Park Service for all 5 U.S. national park sites on Lake Superior.
To learn more about NPLSF projects and programs, you can visit the website at nplsf.org or friend them on Facebook.
I'm Frida Waara.
And I'm Walt Lindala. Thanks for listening to the Lake Superior Podcast.
This podcast made possible with the support of the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation and Media Brew Communications.
This episode brought to you by Cafe Imports, Minneapolis-based importers of fine specialty green coffees. Independently owned and operated since 1993, Cafe Imports has been dedicated to decreasing its impact on the earth through renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and by supporting conservational efforts in places where quality coffee is grown and also where quality coffee is consumed. Where does your coffee come from?
And by the National Parks of Lake Superior Foundation. As a nonprofit, we rely on support from listeners like you. If you like what you hear, please consider a donation. To learn more and make a gift, visit us at www.gosuperior.org.